So I'm here with Don Michael Jr. How are you doing today?
I'm great, bro. How you doing?
Oh man, thank you so much for taking the time. You're from Camden, New Jersey. It has this reputation, like in the 80s and 90s, especially, being a dangerous place. What was it like growing up in that era? In the 80s or 90s, Camden was one of those places that was really hit hard by the crack epidemic.
Yeah. Um, that was like the era that I was first like really stepping outside. You know what I mean? Like for those that don't know me, I'm a 42-year-old rapper, so well 43 now. Um, and at that time, the epidemic 88, I was 8. So I was just starting to like go outside and play with my friends. Y'all gotta remember it was like a lot more lax in the 80s too. Like parents were more we're the they call the latchkey kids.
Right.
Like we were kids, like the youngest kids to like have our house keys on our neck and like just go wander off in the day. There was no cell phones, you know what I mean? There was no tracking devices. So it was just like a lot of freedom outside. And when crack was hitting, you saw a lot of wild stuff. I can curse on this platform.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Of
Okay,
course.
so you saw a lot of wild shit. You know what I mean?
what,
Like for
what,
real.
what was some of the wildest things you saw?
Um, man, it was so for an 8-year old, for a 10-year old, you know what I mean? 10 was really when I like 1990 was when I was really, really, really outside. So for a 10-year old, just seeing somebody getting shot at, or just seeing like the cops bust into a crib and like start dragging out people that you knew. You know what I mean? I was always hanging around older kids. So I was 10, but I might have been around some 14-year olds, some 15-year olds who are like, you know, cops are like busting in the crib and taking them out, and it's like seven kids that live there, and their parents is just cracked out, so they ain't even like around. So you just see those kids. It's just wild. You just saw a lot of wild stuff. You know what I mean? Like people, breaking into abandoned buildings and then just setting up shop in there. It's just in general, just wild stuff.
And one of the really interesting things I was researching about you is that your father was a radio promoter for
Mhm.
RCA, Interscope.
Yeah.
Do you feel your dad working in the music industry cultivated your love of music?
Um. Yeah, it had to have something to do with it. I would be naive to think it didn't have anything to do with it. But my dad was more on the side after the music was made. You know
Right,
what I mean? My dad wasn't really a creative when it
right.
came to making music. So he just had a great ear. So I feel like I got my ear from him. But actually making music was, I think, comes more from my mom, because my mom's like a artist. She like draws, and she's a realtor, so she's like a salesperson, and my mom is kind of just no games, no BS. You know what I mean? So I think the combination kind of made me really want to get into music. I wanted to be creative, but I also had this ear from my dad to like hear when something works, and to get that type of feeling. And that cultivated me being able to pick out records, because he would bring records home before they came out, and he would test them on me and my sister. And then he would go to radio with the ones that we liked.
Do you
You know what I
remember
mean?
any of those records?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember a lot of them. I remember Janet Jackson, What Have You Done For Me Lately?
Okay.
I remember that was like a contest between me and my sister, because my dad's the one that made A&M, because my dad worked for A&M Records, but right after RCA, he made A&M take their chance on Janet Jackson because they were about to drop her. She had put out an album before Control that people don't really remember, and that album flopped. And then he was like, "No, I'm telling you, this record right here, blah blah blah." So he tested it on me and my sister, and I picked out Pleasure Principle. I picked out What Have You Done For Me Lately. And he would do a thing where he would put me and my sister in front of the radio and be like, "All right, y'all wait here. I'm gonna be back in a couple hours. Y'all tell me what they play or whatever." So we would just sit there for hours listening to the radio, and he would literally drive to Philly, go to the radio station WDAS, or one of these Philly radio stations, and they would pick a record and play it. And then it would be like a comp between me and my sister, like, which one they gonna play? They gonna pick the one you picked, or the one you know what I mean? And it's like I won if they picked Pleasure Principle. It's like I won, but I didn't know that when I was 7 years old, 8 years old, I'm picking Janet Jackson's single. You know what I mean? Like, but they gave my dad that type of power. So yeah, those are like great memories for me.
Man, it's really intelligent, like, using your kids as a test audience. I think
Hmm.
I've heard, like, similar things, like, the Tupac story of like how he ended up getting signed to Interscope. Like, I think his daughter, like, Ted Field's daughter, like, actually picked, like, the artist that he was supposed to sign, like, and it
Mm.
ended up being like Tupac Shakur. Uh
Wow.
yeah, yeah. Because your dad worked in the music industry, I guess he
Mm.
was able to, have, like, a more stable life for you guys than the people that lived in your neighborhood. And like at one
Yeah.
point, a group of your childhood friends like broke into your parents' home and like stole your video games or something.
Yeah. Yeah. They stole, excuse me, anything that I loved. Like like anything that I loved. And don't get it twisted. We were still living in Camden. It's
Right.
just my dad had a good job. You know what I mean? But he loved the city. So it's like he never wanted to move out the city. Um, so yeah, my childhood friends, one of the people that I rapped with, and then the other one that I had grew up with, like he lived across the street from me. And they linked up, they kind of clicked up, and we were all cool, or at least I thought we were all cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, jealousy and different things like that back then, you know what I mean? Just kind of took over them, and I think a lot of people had the type of attitude of with me as they good. They got
Right.
Cadillacs in their driveway, like they good.
Right.
They'll, you know what I mean? I like they got and I don't, so I could take from them, but they good. They'll get it back. You know what I mean? That type of situation. So yeah, like one day I just came home from school and just found out that somebody broke in the house, and my dad was just adamant. My dad was like, "It was this nigga," you know what I mean? And I'm just like, "That dad is not that's my boy. Like that's my friend." And then
Yeah.
later things start coming out, and I talk to other people. It's like, "Yo, I thought they was joking around. They told me that they was gonna do this and do that, but I thought they was just joking." You know what I mean? And it's like, "Yo, they really did it. Like they really broke in my house." And took my they took my keyboard, they took my video game system, they took um yeah, but like it's like a Genesis, like, but the keyboard that I got, that was like my studio. You know what I mean? That was like,
Right. Because your father, he had got you like a keyboard software system at 9 years old.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
was that the system that you're referring to, or?
yeah, yeah, yeah. He got me. I don't know if I was 9, but he got me a Yamaha SY 85, which back then might have cost like $2,000, which back then it's like $3,000 $4,000. You know what I mean? Like at least back in like the early '90s. Um, so here goes this super expensive keyboard with a screen on it. I'm used to like Casio keyboards. They got like just a little number dial on there and bossa nova and little preset rhythms, and that's what I was asking for Christmas. I was so young, I had a Christmas list. This is like Christmas list age, and I'm waiting for one of them Casio keyboards. My dad buys me this huge, like gigantic keyboard with that takes discs and has a screen on it and has to be hooked up to speakers. You know what I mean? I'm just like overwhelmed, but I'm like, whatever. I'm gonna figure this out, and that's kind of what started my whole path on like. I was a DJ before that, so it's not what started me in music, but it's what started me in production and really taking it serious. You know what I mean? But yeah, they broke in and stole that, man, and that that crushed me and gave me like a lot of trust issues. You know what I mean? I'm sure, as you can imagine.
Yeah, like something similar happened to me when I was a kid, like where I went to summer camp, and my parents, they got me a Game Gear, and like they
Mm.
kid like actually like robbed me for my Game Gear. And
Oh man.
it was I don't think people realize like how that stuff like traumatizes you, because it's like he kind of like he was a little bit older than me, and
Mm.
he was like, man, he was like, this other kid had lost his Game Boy and stuff, and he was like, I think I know where it is, and he kind of like led me to like a secluded area, and then just
Mm.
like ripped the Game Gear out of my hand and stuff and everything, and like it was
Yeah, I had that same similar type thing happen to me. Like with,
wow,
with my Game Boy, like just walking up the street and somebody hit me in the back of the head, and I was
wow.
like, and I was, and I'm a kid, like I gotta be, 9, 10 years old, something like that.
Mhm.
And somebody hit me in the back of the head, and I'm like, yo, that was hard. Yeah, in my mind, it's like that had to be one of my boys or something, but yo, he hit me too hard. So I turned around mad, and then I look and I'm like, oh, I don't recognize this person. Who the hell is this? You know what I mean? And then he's like pushing me, and he's like I had a little battery pack hooked to my Game Boy, and he like pulled it out and he like ran off with my Game Boy, and I was like, it was like, yo, what just happened? You know what I mean? And he like took off running. I chased him a little bit, but he was way faster than me. So I ran home, told my dad. We hopped in the car. My dad drove around the whole neighborhood looking for him, found him, hopped out on him. He tried to grab a gate. My dad got him, took my Game Boy back, some other stuff. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's the 80s, 90s in Camden was wild. You know what I
So
mean?
are you were saying you started off as a DJ? Were you like doing like house parties or like well,
I remember DJing at one party, but for the most part, I was just learning how to DJ. My dad was a DJ before he started doing radio promotions, and he had DJ equipment that he let me use, and then he bought me some of my own. So I was just learning how to cut and stuff. And then what really interested me is when he would give me records that he would get from the labels, and they had the instrumentals on there. And it was
uh,
like, okay, I got the instrumental, I got the acapella. So wait, I got this beat. Hold on, I can mix this beat with this beat. All right, hold on, I can put this. I started like really learning how to like cut and mix stuff together, and that kind of opened my ear up. Like, okay, I don't want to cut over somebody else's instrumental. I want to make my own instrumental, and that's what got me into like wanting to make beats.
definitely. And I guess at 18, your
Mm,
aunt, your friend's aunt sends your music to an A&R, and you ended up doing Cuban Link's first single around the world. Uh,
right.
what was that experience like? Like running around with Terror Squad, like
I mean, I didn't get to chill with them that much. Pun was real sick. Um, but the experience was super dope. The first time I met Cuban, like, because you got to remember, like, this is like in an era where there's not like emails and all that stuff. Like, you gotta mail up a CD. Like, you gotta meet somebody in person to play beats. And I met Cuban Link after he had already cut the song. I had never met him before that. I met Fat Joe and the A&R, whose name was Rob Tilo. Um, but I had never met Cuban Link, so I came up to New York to hear the song, and they asked me if I wanted to add anything else to it. So Cuban Link was mad because he was like, "Y'all already did the song; it's already right. Like now y'all about to bring this little kid up here, kid producer to like add something to my song, and it ain't gonna work. You know, he about to ruin my song." So he's like laying on the couch. I'm just like, "Oh shit, that's Cuban Link," because I know Cuban Link. You know what I mean? I'm like, "It's Cuban Link over there," and he's like laying on the couch, like kind of sleep. And I remember he had some Timbs on, and he kind of like I sat on the couch and he was asleep, and he like kind of kicked me off the couch, but like in his sleep, like he just kind of like moving. I was just like, let me just not sit there. Let me just stand at my keyboard and figure out some extra sounds. But I added some sounds in. He loved it. And he was like, yo, I thought you was about to come up here and fuck my shit up. Like, mind you, I'm like 17. You know what I mean? Like, I'm in New York for like my second time ever in my life. And I'm like surrounded by grown men, gangsters. This is like Terror Squad, Terror Squad. You know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? But it all worked out, and they all ended up being cool, treating me like family. And Fat Joe even like named me, like so. It was dope. It was a great experience.
yeah. Because like your first name was like AP.
That's the name Fat Joe gave me.
Yeah.
So my name was at that time was Infinite the Architect.
Okay.
Right, because this is that era, that Wu-Tang-ish, everybody scientist, everything, you know what I mean?
Forever
So
building, yeah.
right, so right, so that was my name. It's like I'm gonna be able to make these beats forever. I'm forever building. And I'm Infinite the Architect. So I picked that name because I'm like, and for sure everybody called me Ida or ITA. Um, I picked that name because I felt like nobody was gonna have it. So when Fat Joe was like, "Yo, what do you want your name to be?" He's like filling out the split sheet, and he's like, "What do you want your name to be on the credits?" And I was like, "Oh, my producer name is Infinite the Architect." He was like, "We already got producers on this album named The Infinite Architects," and I was like, "The Infinite Architects are producers to like what is happening?" Like, so now I'm just shell shocked. I'm like, well, how do I think of another name on the spot? They're naming, like, they're writing down the names right now. So Fat Joe was like, don't worry, we'll just put it on your real name or whatever. We'll put your real name. So I was like, all right, cool. My real name's Don Sellers. So he put Don Sellers. And then he's going through more of my beats. And he's like, yeah, we need some more beats because Armageddon's working on his album, Cuban Link's working on his solo album, and we're listening to beats. And at that time, I was sampling a bunch of like action movies and music from action movies. Like, you know, Tom Cruise is running through something and dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. I was sampling all that type of stuff and making beats around that. So he was like, yo, all your beats sound like they action packed. That's what we gonna call you. He's like, your name gonna be action packed or action packed tracks. And I was like, action pack. I don't know. It sounded kind of weird, but I was like, if Fat Joe's saying it, I guess it's cool. I was like, just put Don AP for right now, Don AP Sellers, and then we'll come back to it. But then eventually I ran with action pack tracks, and then it turned into AP tracks, and then it just turned into tracks, and then it morphed into me unchanging my name and just being like, I'm gonna just go with Don Michael. You know what I mean? Because Michael's my middle name. So, you know,
Uh, so at this time, like, were you already working with Frankie Storm, or
no.
that happened later? Like,
That happened like a decade later. That was like a long time afterwards. Frankie Storm was like a amazing songwriter.
Yeah,
That I
"Don't
just
Stop
hit
the
up.
Music" by Rihanna.
Yeah, and a ton of other songs, like
Yeah.
a billion other songs. But that was like her, I think one of her first really big songs. Um, but yeah, I met Frankie on MySpace.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like there was no MySpace back in the Terror Squad days, but
Mhm.
I was just looking around on MySpace for singers because I just got my studio separate from my parents' crib, and I was just looking for artists to work with and try to like really make something. I didn't know she was a song. She was trying to be an artist. She didn't even know she was a songwriter.
Okay.
But we linked up and we didn't like link up in person. I just sent her some tracks and she was like, yeah, these are dope or whatever. And then she kind of disappeared. And I was like, what happened with that girl? Like we were supposed to work together. And I reached back out to her like months later, like, yo, you said you liked the tracks, but I never heard anything back from you. Like, what's up? She's like, yo, what's up? Shit been crazy. I wrote this song for J-Lo and that came out. I'm on Sony now. She's like, but yo, I'm definitely fucking with you. You the only person that ever sent me tracks without like wanting something in return for it. She was like, so I'm gonna fuck with you. Like I'm gonna definitely like link with you. And I was like, dope. And then she did the Rihanna record like right after that. And the J-Lo song Hold It Don't Drop It came out, and then I think the Rihanna record came out like right after that.
Mhm.
And she was out of there. She was on fire. You know, like everybody wanted a please don't stop the music from her. Like she brought techno back to the United States. You know, there was no techno song.
Yeah.
There was no Four on the Floor on urban radio before that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, she killed it. Frankie was that's my songwriting godmom.
So,
Like
like, at this point, are you like, just trying to be a producer, or are you like pursuing like,
Nah, I was rapping. I was still rapping. I had started a label with my partner Dev. Shout out to Devin Wade. I had started a label with him and my other my manager at the time, Razik. And we had a bunch. We started a label called Screwface World Music, and we had a bunch of artists under us. Um, but when I was linking with Frankie, that was like me in the industry. So it was like, all right, I just got to get in where I fit in because I'm like getting back into the industry, and she's a songwriter, she needs a producer. So I'm just gonna be the producer. Then she found out that I could write, and then she was like, "Oh, yo, you could write too? Let me show you how to write these pop songs." Because you got the right idea with the lyrics. Let me just teach you about formatting and how pop songs gotta be. Yo, this gotta be more universal. Yo, the hook gotta be broader so it means more to more people. She taught me like all this different songwriting stuff. And Dev too. Dev ended up tagging along and getting into that whole situation too. So we were just pop writers. I started becoming a pop writer and a pop producer like out of nowhere. It's the kid from Camden, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden I'm making records for Britney Spears and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, this is like wow. We wrote a country song. I was in LA writing for all the people that were on American Idol. It's like I'm like it's like a whirlwind, you know what I mean? Like, yo, what world is this? Like it's just a whole different life.
Being like a ghostwriter though, do you
Mhm.
feel though, like especially in hip hop, it's like, one of those things is like kind of like looked down upon, like, they don't necessarily get the credit, like
Right,
whereas like
right.
pop artists will like, kind of like, give credit to their writers, like, sometimes not, but like, more there's a lot of like, you more people to get recognition who write like, for other genres than in hip hop. You
Yeah, yeah. Well now, since the whole Drake and Meek situation, I think it's come out that there are songwriters involved in hip hop, because the one of the things that happened with people like me that used to be a ghost is that you realize how important the credit is.
yeah,
Like the only difference between a songwriter and a ghostwriter is that ghosts don't normally get publicized credit.
yeah,
Sometimes most of the time a ghost name isn't even in the credits of the song. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Uh, and let alone you getting paid from the residuals of the song. Normally you just get like an upfront fee and a back end thing when it comes out, and then that's it. You're not getting like BMI checks and whatever. So when that whole thing happened with Meek, I think people started to see like, yo, it's important for a songwriter to get their credit, because if not, you're a ghost, and your career turns to Quentin Miller when nobody wants to, when the ghost gets found, nobody wants to be the ghost. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Because now, oh, you a ghost that you were supposed to be hidden, and now you're in the forefront, and that's taken away from me. So I can't do the songs with you anymore because you're no longer hidden. If you come to my studio session, people are gonna assume that you wrote it for me.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's hard for Quentin to pop up in a Nas session. Nas got to explain it, or Quentin got to explain it. I just went to go check it out, or I went to go help on a hook, or he had a singer that couldn't figure out this. So it got to be some explanation instead of like, y'all was in the studio helping create this. You know what I mean? So it's a different world when you're a ghost. So I stopped ghosting. Like, I was a ghost producer too.
Okay. Right.
Uh,
'Cause, like, like that's very common where, producers I have like other producers like work under them and like,
right.
they'll make the beat, but like
Mhm.
because they have the name, they can sell the beat.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. So I was a ghost producer um, under a producer that was pretty big at the time, like back in like 2003, 2004. He was on fire, and I admired him, and I ended up meeting him in Sam Ash. Like, I worked at Sam Ash selling music equipment.
That's cool though. Like man, I love like
Yeah. And so I was in
that's a
Sam Ash.
perfect job though for somebody in the music industry though. Like I think
Yeah, because at least at that time all the professionals had to float through. Now people just order stuff online, order from Sweetwater or something like that. But back then, if you wanted professional studio equipment, you had to go to Sam Ash or Guitar Center. You know what I mean? And I was in Sam Ash making beats on the keyboards because it was a slow day. So that's what I would do. I would just go in there and just make beats on whatever I didn't own and just try to learn how to use it. Hopefully a customer will be walking in while I'm making something and they'd be like, "Oh, you made that on that? Yeah, I want one of those." You know what I mean? So this one producer walked in and he heard what I was making, and then I didn't know who he was, but when he gave me his card, and I was like, "Oh, yo, oh shit, like this is you." And he's like, "Yeah, yeah." He's like, "Yo, I don't know what you're doing, how much you make here, but I'll pay you whatever you make in here if you come to New York and work with me." And I was like, "Oh, well, yeah, I'm good." And Sam Ash, I'll never forget, my boss at Sam Ash gave me a leave of absence. He was like, "Yo, don't quit." He was like, "Don't quit. Take a leave of absence. So that way, whenever you back in town and you want to work," because I was a really good salesman. He's like, "Whenever you back in town and you want to work, the door is open. Just come in and work whenever you want to work or whatever." He was like, "But you can't pass up this opportunity." So he gave me that leave of absence, but I still had a security blanket with my job. That was like super cool of them. So
yeah, because I feel like the music industry is fickle. Like
yeah.
I think I was reading like this story about like Bill Withers, and he
Mhm.
was talking about like he didn't like quit his job like when like one of his like first songs like popped off because he was like it's so fickle. It was
Right.
like did you ever feel like that sometimes like your job is like stopping you from like pursuing your career in music like all like how do you balance that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I felt like that. I think every musician feels like that when you got to keep that job, but you got these opportunities popping up, and sometimes you can't attack the opportunity because they got work in the morning and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Um, what I failed to realize was that once I made music my main thing, my main source of income, it would become my job,
Right.
you know? So it's like you feel the same about any job that you have to do when you don't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
And even when it's music, it's like, yo, if I don't feel like dropping an album this year, I still have to drop an album. You know what I mean? I still got to do the interviews. I still got to like go through the whole process of creating this, mixing it, figuring out the visuals, who's going to help me with the styling, who's going to whatever. I still got to do all that stuff. So what I didn't so I did feel the frustration of having a job and all that. Sam Ash was very close to the music industry, and I still felt like I still don't feel like being here in the morning. But when I got fired from Sam Ash, um, I realized how important it was to have something outside of music helping fund the music. And also another thing that I realized was how much motivation was in that job,
Mm.
because I'm at that job trying to figure out how to make it big so I don't have to be at that job. Once I'm not at that job, I don't have that motivation of like I have to do this thing I don't want to do. My life kind of became like this big, you know, a lot of freedom. Like all the barriers were loose. But you don't realize that when the barriers are gone, you could just float away. You know what I mean? So it's like that's what was happening for me. I was just, I forgot what day it is. I'm not thinking about a calendar, a schedule. I don't have to wake up at a certain time on Tuesday. It's like, what Tuesday? Is it Tuesday? It's like it's Saturday. It's like, oh, I don't know. All these days are the same. I have no clue. So you start kind of floating free. I wish that I would have kept my job longer before leaping into music and making music my full-time income. But that was my dream since I was a kid. It's like I want to live off the music. I didn't realize that living off the music would make the lifespan of the music so much more difficult, because it's like, yo, I want to live off the music, but also this music has to make me money now. I have a mortgage, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword. It's a
For
double-edged sword.
you have this song 9 years ago called Kanye, and
Mm-hmm.
you say in it, about Wanya Morris from Boys to Men. He told Atlantic Records A&R Daryl Jones that you were signed to him, and he ended up signing like Lupe Fiasco instead of
Mm-hmm.
you. Can you talk about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. So my manager Zeke, at the time knew somebody named Mike the Barber. I believe his name is right. He was a famous barber in New York. He cut everybody. He cut Diddy's hair. He cut Jadakiss hair. So Mike would do this thing where if an exec sat in his chair, he would play some beats or something from people that sent him stuff. Like he was like, this is his way of like networking, and hopefully he could find this artist or this producer or whatever, play it for Diddy or something, and Diddy sign him. And it's just like, yo, I met him through Mike the Barber. That's Mike's way of doing this thing. So Daryl Jones used to get his hair cut by Mike the Barber. Zeke knew Mike, sent him a CD of my beats, and on that CD I was doing hooks. I put hooks on a lot of my beats. So Daryl was like, yo, who is that? And he's like, some dude named, Trax or whatever. My man Z gave me this, like one of his artists. And he's like, yo, he's like, these beats is fire. Then he's like, who's doing the hooks? He's like, I think it's the same dude. So he's like, yo, I gotta call him. So he called Zeke. So Zeke set up a meeting. Now, in the meantime, over those like months before that, I was working with Wanye. Um, and Wanye had a partner. I forget his name. I think his name was like Biz or something like that. But anyway, I was working with Wanye on Will Smith's new project.
Oh
So I was
wow.
like, yeah. So I was doing like a bunch of like beats and but I
Was
was just going over.
was it
Um,
like Lost and Found or like
I
what?
don't remember. I don't remember. I'm not even sure if it ever came out.
Okay.
But I was just going over to Wanye's studio, and just making beats. Wanye had a studio. Sean from Boys to Men had a studio. These were all in like the Touch of Jazz building, like DJ Jazzy Jeff's building in Philadelphia. So they had different studios. So I would go over there, make beats. And then I kind of like stopped going over there because it was like, all right, I did a lot over there, but I got to focus on my label and do all this other stuff. So I'm doing that. Zeke's like, yo, you got this meeting. So Wanye's partner calls me one day and he's just like, yo, what's been up, bro? You ain't been to the studio. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I just been working on this. Actually, yo, I'm hyped because I got a meeting with Atlantic. He was like, oh, word. He was like, who you dealing with over at Atlantic? And I was like, Daryl Jones. He was like, Daryl, I know Daryl. And I was like, that's what's up. He was like, yo, I played your stuff for Daryl. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, me and Wanye both played your stuff for Daryl, bro. We gave him a CD. What's your number on it? What's your name and your number on there? And I was like, oh, well, so this will make all the story make sense now. I was like, well, he didn't even call me. He called my manager, Zeke. So I know that whatever this connection is wasn't from y'all, because y'all didn't even know I had a manager named Zeke. I was just working with y'all. So he called Z, which means this came from Mike the Barber and that whole situation, not a CD that y'all gave him with my number on there. So they're like, yeah, but your name back then, my name was Trax Trigger. And he's like, yo, nobody forgets that name, bro. Like, your name was Trax Trigger, bro. I'm sure he just didn't want to go through us because he knew he would have to pay top dollar to get to you. And I was just like, well, why would he have to go through y'all? I'm not signed to y'all. Like, I'm just going to y'all studio and making beats. I'm not signed to y'all or nothing like that. So why would, if he didn't want to go through y'all, oh well, he just didn't want to go through y'all. He went to he found a different way to get to me and found my manager. Whatever it is, cool. And it was like, nah, that ain't cool. Nah, we don't, that ain't cool, yo. Imagine if this was the street. You know what I mean? He didn't found a new way to go around and get to the connect. I was like, yeah, but it's not the street.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, this is the music industry, and this dude didn't want to do business with y'all. And he found a way around. I was like, and I don't even know if that's the case. I'm just saying that with the position y'all, with the statements you're saying, maybe he just found a way around. So they're like, nah. So Wanye calls me. He's like, yo, Trash, you gotta understand this shit like the street, man. He trying not to pay us. He just trying to go around us to get to the connect. And I'm just like, Wanye, I'm telling you, bro, do not call. He's like, yo, I gotta call him. So Wanye, I guess, calls Daryl. Daryl calls my manager, like, yo, before Wanye called, Daryl was saying, like, yo, I want to get your guy tracks with this other guy I got named Lupe or whatever. I got two. He's like, I'm not signing a bunch of people. He's like, but I got this kid Lupe. He's amazing lyrically, but that's what all he do. He's just a lyricist. He was like, Tracks make songs and Tracks make beats. He like a more hood Kanye. He was like, so this Kanye thing is happening, bro. Producers that make beats is starting to pop up. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I've been making beats for 10 years already, bro. I've been doing this for forever. And when I was doing it, I was inspired by Jermaine Dupri,
Right.
by Dr. Dre, by Redman, people that were artists that were already making beats and being artists. You know what I mean? So it wasn't a new thing, but for the industry, I guess they were finally recognizing that it could be both. You know what I mean? There's a person that could do both. And Kanye was the first person that everybody was recognizing that could do both, even though there was other producers and rappers.
Timberland, like
yeah, there was other people already doing it, but I guess people didn't consider Dr. Dre or Jermaine Dupri a real rapper. They were producers that got on their beats. Okay. And I guess people didn't consider Redman a real producer. He was just a rapper that made some beats or whatever. But Redman had gotten the production too. A lot of people don't even know that. But anyway, I was like, all right, I'll be the more hood Kanye, whatever. I don't care. So he's like, yeah, he's like, I'm leaning towards Trax Trigger because you could be you got the beats and the rhymes, you self-contained, all this stuff. It's like, but I got this kid, Lupe. So anyway, after Wanye called him, it was kind of like, yo, I don't want to be in the middle of no mess. You know what I mean? Like, get everything straight, holler at me. I never spoke to Daryl again. My manager never heard from Daryl again. And he ended up signing Lupe. And then I don't hear anything about that, because I'm not really, after I lost that situation, I'm just kind of like mad. I'm in a dark place, And then maybe a year later, I hear Lupe on Touch the Sky with Kanye.
You said you dropped a tear, like, when you heard
it. Yeah. I forget the timeline, but when I heard Lupe on Kanye's song, I was just like, yeah, that could have been me, bro. Like, that's crazy. Like, all right, I got to figure this out. You know what I mean? Because I just lost like one of those, what I was feeling like once in a lifetime opportunities due to somebody being jealous,
Yeah, but like, sometimes they say like, what doesn't happen is God's protection,
Yeah.
it's good to see like all the success you're having, like, now, like,
Hmm.
because like, you know, I let me just tell you how I learned about you, man. It was like a year ago, and I was talking to my homeboy, and I was like, man, like, who were some of his name's Artistic MCs, rapper from Chicago, like,
Okay.
and I was like, man, like, who are some of, like, the rappers that you really listen to? He was like, man, he was like, you got to check out this guy named Don Michael Jr. And so,
Mm.
like, I was like, man, I went and I checked you out, and I was like, man, like, I've been listening to you ever since, followed you on Instagram, and I finally had just reached out to you, and I was like, happy like you responded, man, like, because like, a lot of times people who have like bigger like followings don't want to like
Mm.
do interviews and stuff with people who don't have like as large as a following. So, man, I salute you, man.
Oh yeah, nah, I never really felt like that. I always felt like everybody is kind of just one thing away from their break. You know what I mean? I guess it's just from the life that I've lived. It's like, man, I'm one song away. I'm one phone call away, one email away, and one
Mhm.
situation could change your whole thing. So I look at everybody's situation kind of the same, especially if you're in an entertainment field. So you're one interview away from some viral moment. So and people are just like, "Who's the dude that did the interview?" Like, yo, it was a great question. Like, he did his thing or whatever. You're one podcast clip away from going crazy and everybody knowing who you are. So I never look at it like that. I just always look at it like it's just not this person's time yet, but I like to be there before it's their time. I'm the same way with everything too, bro. I'm like that with the music, with the people in the music industry. um a lot of times we as producers will get like these they call them who's looking lists, and they'll give you like a list of like all the artists that are working on projects and what they're looking for and stuff. And I never really like going for the big names on those who's looking lists.
Right.
Like the first people always pop up, and it's Cardi B. She's looking for beats. She wants club. Yo, it's Rihanna. It's Beyonce's working on this. So whatever label you're getting it from, and then I'll scroll through and I'll be like, who's that? And I'll go and I'll check them out. I'll look them up on Instagram. Oh, she only got, you know, 20,000 followers. All right. She must have just got signed. She must have got signed off her talent.
Mhm.
Okay. So she got the talent. Obviously, she got the look. She got this. I want to work with her. Nobody knows her. If I can do something major with her and get a hit with her, now we blow up. If I get a record with Beyonce, I'm lost in a sea of other producers that got a record with Beyonce. It's great for my career, but it's even better if I help blow an artist up that doesn't have a name yet.
That's
So
dope outlook, man. Like, you have a really great mindset. Like, I really enjoy, like, a lot of your projects. The Wolf Smell Joy, like, is incredible.
thank you.
What's next for you musically?
I actually am dropping my first EP on in like a week, like December 15th.
Okay.
It's coming out on it's called the Earl Grey Tapes Volume 1. So I got 5 songs on there. I might add another song on there. I'm dropping it on even.biz, which is what I dropped my last project on, was
Right.
even.biz. So that gets directly to the fans first, and then I'm gonna drop it on streaming probably like in a week after that. Um so yeah, I got the Earl Grey Tapes is up next. And I'm probably gonna do, my plan is to do 2 tapes this winter. That tape, that one, 5 songs, I'm probably do like another 5 or 6 songs before the winter's over. So another one probably in like February or something like that. And then my next album is Where's Your Ball? Or If They're Your Friends, Where's Your Ball? One or the other. That title is a little longer, so I might shorten it to Where's Your Ball. But the original title is If They're Your Friends, Where's Your Ball? So that's my next album, and that's what I'm working on.
Definitely. Don Michael Jr., thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh yeah, no problem, man.
I appreciate you.
All right. Have a good one, bro.
You too.